All right, welcome everyone. My name is Wendy Castle. I'm the owner of One Bite Nutrition. I'm a dietitian by trade and a diabetes care and education specialist. Super happy to have Nikki Bomar here with us. She's one of our incredible dietitians. And we're continuing on our hormone series. So we're going to go over cortisol today. So Nikki, can you tell us what exactly is cortisol?
Yeah, so I feel like we most often hear this one called the stress hormone. And I feel like that name doesn't really tell the full story. So hopefully we can set that story straight today. It's a steroid hormone and it's produced by our adrenal glands. It helps regulate things like blood sugar, metabolism, inflammation, blood pressure. It has a role in our sleep cycles. And then, of course, our body's response to stress as well. So I feel like it often gets a bad rap known as the stress hormone. It's not totally bad. We do need it to survive.
Yeah, absolutely. It has a function, but sometimes it can kind of get out of hand, right? So, like, why do you feel like cortisol has a bad reputation, or people may say, "Oh, my cortisol levels are so high, I'm having issues losing weight."
And it really comes down to that it rises during stress,
Mhm.
right? So whether we're under physical or emotional stress, our brain operates or activates that hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis or HPA axis, leading to that cortisol release. And of course, that spike up. This prepares our body, right? So that fight or flight response, it's getting us ready for that. That, of course, again, we need that. That's a good essential survival tool. It's when it's chronically elevated that we end up with some issues.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I have some clients with chronic stress, and you can definitely see how it impedes part of the process. So a lot of times when I'm with clients, not only do we go over nutrition goal, we'll go over a physical activity goal, but we also do a behavioral goal, something to help them manage their stress so that we can deal with not just food, not just activity, not just energy intake and output, but really all the underlying things that are going on. So, can you explain a little bit more about what cortisol does in the body?
Yeah, so lots of major functions going on here. One of the biggest ones is raising that blood sugar. So, of course, during those stressful events, our body wants to make sure we have enough energy available for that. That's how it functions there. It mobilizes stored energy. So, it helps to break down the fat, the protein, the glucose, all of that for fuel. Inflammation wise, it's helping regulate that by controlling those immune responses. It follows a daily rhythm. So a lot of times it's highest in the morning, so it helps you wake up better, and then lowest at night so that we're not like wired ready to not sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, it does more than just regulate appetite, but can you kind of go in and explain specifically how cortisol affects a person's appetite?
Yeah, I feel like that's the way we see it, or it's presented to us most often when people come to us, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, it can increase appetite, especially for again those quick energy foods like carbohydrates when that stress is really high. So again, the blood sugar fluctuations go higher, cravings may intensify there. Emotional eating is usually more common in those high stress states, and so then again, causing us to want more, even if I don't physically need more, my appetite might be higher. So that cortisol interacts with those other hormones that are controlling hunger, like our insulin, our ghrelin, our leptin. So it's making that regulation for our appetite a lot more complex.
Yeah, absolutely. When I tell people when we're working on stress eating and foods that they're choosing at different times, particularly if they're under stress, I'm like, most people never like go towards like, oh, I'm so stressed, I'm gonna go have a salad, or I'm so stressed, I'm gonna go eat some vegetables. It's always like something that's high in carbs, high in sugar, so that you can kind of get that instant release of happy hormones shooting off. And not that it's a bad response, but if it's chronic and it's happening all the time, it's definitely finding a different tool and a way to manage stress so that you don't have these cravings is definitely essential. So, all in all, like, how does cortisol cause weight gain?
So not directly, right? So again, never nothing's ever that simple, right? So again, that chronically elevated cortisol is what's to blame here. So it can lead to, increased fat storage, especially in our abdomen, higher blood sugars, which then can lead to some insulin resistance, and then of course that increased appetite too. So it's not that cortisol causes the weight gain, but the side effects of a high cortisol can cause that weight gain. Lots of lifestyle factors play a role here. So like sleep, of course, stress, our food access is going to be a big thing. And of course, overall health as well. So blaming that one hormone really simplifies that picture. We kind of got to look at everything and the whole cascading of effects there.
Yeah, and I really like the part of you bringing up food access. Some of it is intentional, some of it's non-intentional. I usually tell people that struggle with emotional eating, keep your trigger foods out of the house. Like, you
Mhm.
know, if when you're stressed, you typically eat donuts or mac and cheese, or, you know, I've seen different ones, pizza or whatever your
Whatever
go-to
it
food
is.
is.
Mm-hmm.
Try not to leave it in the house. Don't make it super accessible, because we live stressful lives and it's very
Yeah.
easy to fall victim of that. And not that those are bad foods, they're not. They're just not, let's eat them every day and too much foods. Um, and we don't want you to set yourself up for failure. So, yeah, you're exactly right on that. But food access is also an issue. You know, a lot of times when people are food insecure, some of the things that they're getting from food pantries or different food delivery methods is high in carbs, it's high in sugar, it's, you know, it's that shelf stable processed food
Mhm.
that kind of plays into that issue as well. So, um, anyway, so why does stress make people crave carbs?
So just like you said, right, when we have that high stress, everyone seems to have their go-to food for that thing, you know? And I always explain that as, or your brain's really smart, right? It knows if it makes you want this XYZ food, you're going to give it and get it, right?
Mhm.
So it wants that quick energy under stress. That comes from those carbohydrates, right? And so they're going to raise our blood sugar quickly, which can temporarily reduce that stress hormone activity and increase, again, like I said, our happy hormones like serotonin. And so a lot of people say, okay, well, I just don't have the willpower, right? If there is a biological response behind this, and that's why it's happening. It's just like you said, okay, is it chronically happening? That's where we come into issues with it.
Yeah. So you mentioned blood sugar, you know, me working with people with diabetes. Can you kind of explain how cortisol affects somebody's blood sugar?
Yeah. So something I really like to talk to patients about is the liver function of producing glucose, because a lot of people don't know that that exists. So increases in cortisol increases that glucose production in the liver and it can reduce our insulin sensitivity. So of course, over time, that chronic stress can contribute to the higher fasting blood sugar levels, and then, of course, a higher risk for type 2 diabetes, especially in individuals that might already have a higher risk for it already. So again, one reason that stress management is part of the whole metabolic health picture.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you had to give a patient advice, what type of lifestyle habits would you tell them to try to implement to support healthy cortisol levels in themselves?
And a big consistency things, right? So can I consistently get, good sleep, 7 to 9 hours? I always say that that 7 hour mark is our goal. I want at least 7 hours. Eating regular meals to stabilize that blood sugar throughout the day, eating consistently throughout the day, protein with our meals, not having too much caffeine, and of course, movement, and not just like super intense workouts, right? We don't have to go to the gym for 2 hours every day. I can take, a 15-minute walk after dinner, and that's still including that movement there. And of course, anything that's going to help us with that stress management. If it's, going outside is helping us. If it's just having some mindful time during the day, breathing exercises, anything that works there. Just trying to find a rhythm for each day across all the things on our board.
Yeah, absolutely. I know some people, you know, they get really surprised that working out and an intense physical activity actually raises cortisol levels temporarily. And it's true, it does. But that doesn't mean, you know, like every now and then you can't have an intense workout. That's perfectly fine. It's just when sometimes we encounter patients that like over exercise and it's like, can you really over exercise? Yeah, actually you can. um, and if cortisol levels are something that you're really trying to pay attention to, just knowing that that plays a role. And realizing, like, I had a patient that would go to the gym 2 to 3 hours a day, sometimes morning and night, and that was her stress reliever, but her
Mm-hmm.
cortisol levels were super high. And she had multiple areas of stress. But that was one thing that we kind of talked about. I was like, let's take it down a notch. Let's not get so intense about things, and let's work on other stress management things that you enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, sometimes it can get out of control. I feel very shameful asking this next one because I just skipped a bunch of meals because I was traveling. But if you can enlighten me, Nikki, on what I did to myself today, how does skipping meals affect cortisol levels?
Yeah. So again, that it perceives it as a stress, right? Skipping our meals can be a stress signal to our body. So of course it's going to increase our cortisol, right? So for some people, extending fasting can worsen our blood sugar instability and of course stress system. Everyone's a little bit different too. But yeah, I mean, a lot of times we see, okay, blood sugars in particular, okay, yeah, for a little bit for fasting,
Mhm.
they can do pretty well, but over time, it really takes a hit to those things. And again, just like our body, if anything, it's a safety mechanism. That's what that cortisol is for. And so I miss a meal. Okay, that puts a physical stress on my body. Okay, I need to make energy from somewhere, and you're not eating energy. So let me do something about that, right? So that can lead to, of course, different appetite regulation, increased cortisol, the whole lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish I was wearing a CGM or a continuous glucose monitor right now. I'm not, but I'm betting about 30 to 45 minutes ago, my blood sugar was dipping pretty hard because I got off the plane and I'm like, I'm hangry. I can't just live on pretzels. Like I'm so hungry. So luckily I got a little bit of a bite before we recorded this. But yeah, skipping meals plays a role on blood sugar, on cortisol levels, on your choices the next time you choose to eat. A lot of times, people kind of set themselves up for failure when if they go into a meal so hungry, it's harder to make those good decisions.
Hmm.
So we talked a little bit more, and I kind of talked about how I had a patient that was doing some excessive exercise. But can you explain how exercise increases cortisol levels?
Yeah, so just like you said, it does temporarily increase them. Again, a controlled stressor. So short-term cortisol elevation, completely normal during healthy exercise, right? That key difference is recovery, right? So am I giving my body time to recover from that activity? If I'm chronically overtraining, like you said, okay, hitting the gym really hard, 2 to 3 hours every single day, or even, multiple times throughout the day, that cortisol is just staying elevated, right? So it goes up, comes down like normal, but we're not giving it that time to come down. It's just up, up, up. So again, balance. That's really what we're going for here.
Yeah, absolutely. So if somebody kind of thinks that their cortisol levels are chronically elevated, what are some symptoms that they might experience?
So things like persistent fatigue, right? We're always feeling tired, but then having difficulty sleeping at night. Those are two really big ones. Of course, that blood sugar instability, right? If we, have a diabetic in our food, our activity, like everything looks nice, but those blood sugars are still just completely wacky. That's something we look at. Increased abdominal fat, frequent illnesses, right? My body, again, not having time to recover. And of course, heightened anxiety too. I feel like a lot of times that one might be overlooked for high cortisol and kind of maybe misdiagnosed as something else, but that is a big one too. Of course, these symptoms can overlap with many other things as well. So, of course, just get evaluated for anything if you want to look at it. But things that to look at, okay, maybe this is something I should get looked at.
Yeah, absolutely. And chronic inflammation too. That's one thing that we notice when those cortisol levels are high is, you just this inflammation that isn't easily managed doing other things until we address the root cause.
Yeah.
So what would you say is the biggest myth about cortisol?
I would say people really like to think that cortisol is the enemy, right? So just like you said, there is some really good things that cortisol does. Again, it's not completely, bad. It helps us wake up in the morning. Like I said, it keeps the inflammation in check. It helps our body respond to danger if we're really in that like dangerous situations. And of course, it supports our metabolism too, not in a huge way like some of our other hormones, but it does play a pretty big role. And so we don't want it to go away completely, of course,
Mhm.
but we want that healthy regulation of cortisol.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of times do when I talk with patients is it's about finding balance and working with your body instead of against your body. Don't fight your hormones. You need them. They're there for a reason, and we
Mm-hmm.
need them in certain levels at different times in our life. So don't fight the process. Work with your body. Listen to your body. Let's figure out where you have areas of improvement, which we all do. But some people are suffering a little bit more of those side effects than others. So if you
Mm-hmm.
think cortisol is an issue for you, you've got some questions about it, feel free to reach out. You can reach out to myself. You can reach out to Nikki. Our website's www.onebitenutrition.com. You can look in there. We have some resources. We have a really cool recipe database. So if you're wondering about some anti-inflammatory recipes or anything like that, be sure to check that out as well.